On a windy autumn afternoon, amidst the hurried crowds, a small stall stood quietly on the sidewalk. The paintings were more than just art, they were the young woman's last hope. But would anyone truly stop to notice? Then, a man approached. He observed in silence, his sharp eyes settling on a particular painting, a lone cowboy riding through a vast. Picking it up, he asked gently, "How much for this one?" $200. The girl replied, expecting nothing. But instead of reaching for his wallet, he wrote a check and placed it on the table. When she looked down, her heart nearly stopped. $50. Stunned, she looked up. "Why?" The man simply smiled. "Because you deserve it. If you believe that kindness still exists and has the power to create miracles, hit like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this." New York in early autumn was bathed in shades of gold and crimson, with maple leaves swirling gently on the brick-paved sidewalks. The air was crisp, just cool enough for people to pull on a light jacket while still enjoying the gentle warmth of the afternoon sun. The city remained as busy as ever, commuters rushing by, tourists leisurely exploring the streets, and here and there, street artists immersed in their own artistic dreams. On a quiet corner near Union Square, a small stall stood humbly among the gleaming storefronts. On an old folding table, watercolor paintings were neatly arranged, each one carrying a piece of the artist's soul. A handwritten sign was carefully placed in front, hand-painted artwork, fundraising for medical treatment. Every bit of support is deeply appreciated. The artist behind the stall was Lillian Carter, a young woman with deep brown eyes, like morning coffee. Her skin was pale under the soft sunlight, her cheeks slightly hollow, yet there was still a fire of determination in her gaze. Lillian never imagined she would one day be selling her paintings on the sidewalk like this. She had loved painting since childhood, once dreaming of grand galleries where her art would be displayed under warm spotlights. But life rarely follows the paths we expect. 6 months ago, she was diagnosed with lymphoma. Since then, everything had changed. The endless rounds of chemotherapy had drained her strength, taken away the long, silky hair she once adored, and left her dreams of becoming an artist hanging in uncertainty. But Lillian refused to give up. Chemotherapy was expensive, and her savings were dwindling fast. Insurance covered only a small fraction of the costs. While the bills kept piling up, she knew she had to fight for herself. If she couldn't showcase her art in a prestigious gallery, she would bring it to the people in her own way, even if it meant setting up a small stall on this bustling sidewalk. Yet reality was harsher than she had hoped. A middle-aged woman stopped in front of the stall, her eyes scanning the paintings with mild curiosity. Lillian immediately smiled, hope flickering in her expression. "Hello," she said gently. "Is there any piece you like?" The woman picked up a painting of a fiery sunset over the Hudson River. But instead of asking the price, she looked at Lillian with a sorrowful gaze. "Did you paint all of these?" she asked, her voice tinged with regret. Lillian nodded, trying to keep her smile steady. "Yes, I did. I hope to share my art with people." The woman sighed, setting the painting back down without buying it. "You're so strong. Keep fighting, dear." Then she walked away. Lillian clenched her hands inside her coat pockets, trying not to let the disappointment show on her face. She didn't want pity. She didn't want people to see her as someone to be pitied. She just wanted someone to truly appreciate her paintings, for their beauty, not out of sympathy for her circumstances. A little boy ran past, his eyes lighting up as he spotted a painting of an autumn sky filled with falling maple leaves. "Mom, look, I love this one." The mother barely glanced at it before pulling him along. "Come on, sweetie, we have things to do." Lillian let out a quiet sigh. The entire morning, she had sold only one small painting, and for much less than its true worth. The crowd kept rushing past, too preoccupied to stop and admire the art she had poured her heart into. She had braced herself for challenges, but was her faith strong enough to withstand the world's indifference? On the 4th day since Lillian had set up her little art stall on the sidewalk, New York remained as bustling as ever. Golden leaves continued to drift down, blanketing the crowded streets. She had grown accustomed to sitting in the crisp autumn air, quietly watching the endless stream of people pass by, most never stopping. Still, Lillian refused to lose hope. Today, she rearranged her paintings, trying to make the display more inviting. Vibrant autumn scenes of New York, the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, and Central Park bathed in shades of red and orange were placed front and center. She hoped the bright colors would catch the eyes of passers-by. But the morning had been no better than the previous days. A few people stopped to browse. But in the end, they all walked away without buying anything. Lillian was starting to feel exhausted. The chemotherapy had drained most of her strength, and sitting outside all day only worsened her fatigue. Around noon, as she absent-mindedly watched the passing cars, a middle-aged man approached her stall. He wore a long brown coat and held a small notebook and a camera in his hands. His face was calm, but there was a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "Hello, are you the artist behind these paintings?" he asked in a warm, steady voice. Lillian nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yes, I painted all of these." The man glanced at the small sign in front of the table and raised an eyebrow. "You're selling art to fund your medical treatment?" Lillian hesitated for a moment but eventually nodded. She never wanted her illness to be a tool for pity. But it was the truth, and she couldn't hide from it. The man nodded thoughtfully before extending his hand. "I'm Richard Hayes, a reporter for the New York Chronicle. I write about everyday stories from the city, and I think yours is one worth sharing." Lillian blinked in surprise. "You want to write about me?" "Yes," Richard said with a reassuring smile. "You're a young artist, fighting a serious illness yet still determined to follow your passion. Your story will inspire many people." Lillian hesitated. She had never imagined being featured in a newspaper. But if it could help her sell more paintings and afford her next round of treatment, then why not? "All right," she said softly. Richard stayed for a while, asking about her life, her artistic journey, and the challenges she had faced since her diagnosis. Lillian answered honestly, speaking about her fears and exhaustion, but also about the hope that art gave her. After their conversation, Richard took a few photos of her stall, her paintings, and one portrait of her sitting among her artwork. "The article will be published tomorrow," he said before leaving. "I hope it brings good things your way." Lillian could only smile and thank him. She didn't dare to expect too much. After all, in a city this vast, how many people would truly care about an unknown artist like her? The next morning, Lillian arrived at her stall as usual. But something was different. As soon as she laid out her paintings, people started approaching, not just passing by, but actually stopping, admiring, and asking about prices. An elderly woman immediately picked out a painting of Central Park. A young couple bought 2 autumn landscapes. "We read about you in the paper this morning," the woman said warmly. "You're incredibly talented." Lillian froze. She quickly pulled out her phone and searched for the New York Chronicle. Almost immediately, she found the article with a bold headline, "A Young Artist's Battle Against Cancer, a Story of Resilience and Art." Below the title was a photo of her, sitting by her art stall. Her gaze filled with determination but also carrying the weight of her struggles. The article told her story truthfully, focusing on her talent and perseverance rather than just her illness. The article spread faster than she had imagined. Within hours, dozens of people had come to her stall. Some bought paintings, while others simply stopped by to offer words of encouragement. Some even offered donations, but Lillian politely refused. She wanted to earn her money through her art, not through pity. She had never sold this many paintings before. By the end of the day, her earnings equaled an entire week's worth of sales combined. Lillian could hardly believe what was happening. She had once thought the world was too indifferent, too cold, but now, she realized that sometimes, all it took was one story to touch the right hearts, and everything could change in ways she never expected. An autumn afternoon in New York looked like a painting brushed with warm hues. The golden light of the setting sun stretched across the stone-paved sidewalks, casting a soft yet vibrant glow over Lillian's small art stall. Ever since the article about her had been published, her booth had drawn unprecedented attention. Art lovers, curious passers-by, and even foreign tourists came to admire her paintings. Lillian was grateful but also overwhelmed. She had grown used to spending long days selling her art, but she had never faced so many questions, so much interest, and, at times, pitiful gazes. As the sunlight began to fade and the crowd thinned, an older man slowly approached her stall. He was unlike her previous customers. He wasn't rushed, he wasn't noisy, and he didn't seem to be there out of mere curiosity. He wore a weathered brown leather coat, faded gray jeans, and a pair of scuffed leather boots. But the most striking thing about him was his wide-brimmed cowboy hat, which shadowed part of his face, leaving only his sharp, deep-set eyes visible, eyes that seemed to have witnessed many things in life. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood there silently, his gaze slowly scanning each painting. The way he observed them was different from the others, not just admiring but as if he were reading a story hidden behind every brushstroke. Lillian sensed this and remained quiet, allowing him to take his time. Finally, after a long moment, the man spoke. "Did you paint all of these?" His voice was deep, slightly raspy, carrying a southern drawl. Lillian nodded. "Yes, every single one." He nodded, his eyes still fixed on the paintings. "You have a unique style. The way you use light, there's something special about it. Not just beautiful, it feels like a memory." Lillian froze for a moment. That was exactly what she had always hoped to capture in her work. "I paint with emotion," she said softly. "Every piece is a part of my memory or my perception of the world around me." The man gave a faint smile. He continued observing until he stopped in front of a black and white painting tucked in the corner of the table. It depicted a lone cowboy on horseback, riding toward a distant desert horizon. "This one," he murmured, lightly tracing the edge of the frame with his fingers. "It reminds me of a place I once passed through." Lillian smiled. "It's one of my favorites. I've always been drawn to the image of lone cowboys, wandering across vast landscapes. It evokes a sense of freedom, but also solitude." The man seemed lost in thought, as if her words had awakened a distant memory. After a moment, he asked, "How much for this one?" Lillian hesitated briefly before answering. $200. He nodded, but instead of pulling out cash or a credit card like other customers, he reached inside his coat and took out a checkbook. Lillian furrowed her brows, unsure of what to expect. Before she could say anything, he flipped to a fresh page, pulled out a pen, and began writing. Seconds later, he tore the check from the book and placed it on the table. Lillian looked down, and her heart nearly stopped. $50. She stared at the man, completely stunned. You made a mistake." The man only smiled. "No, I didn't." Lillian shook her head, trying to push the check back toward him. "But this painting is only worth $200. I can't accept this." Gently but firmly, he slid the check back toward her. "I'm not just buying a painting. I'm investing in you." Lillian, her breath caught. "Investing? In me?" The man crossed his arms, his gaze serious. "I've been following your story since the article was published. You have real talent, but what you lack isn't skill or passion, it's opportunity. This $50,000 isn't charity. It's an investment, so you can keep painting without worrying about survival." Lillian was at a loss for words. She had never met this man before. Yet here he was, offering her a life-changing sum of money simply because he believed in her talent. "But, why me?" she asked, her voice unsteady. The man's smile was enigmatic. "Because I see a part of myself in you, and I believe that one day, you'll do something great." Without waiting for her response, he tipped his hat slightly, then turned and walked away. Lillian watched his figure disappear into the evening crowd, feeling as if she had just lived through a dream. She glanced down at the check once more, a storm of emotions swelling in her chest. Perhaps her life was truly about to change. Lillian remained frozen, her eyes locked on the $50 check as if it were an illusion that could disappear at any moment. She had never imagined that one of her paintings could ever bring in such an enormous amount of money. But what shocked her even more wasn't the number written on the check. It was the name signed at the bottom. Elliot Grayson. The name felt strangely familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. Her mind spun in chaos until a distant memory flashed, an old movie her father used to watch over and over again when she was little. It was a Western film, and the cowboy riding across the screen looked exactly like the man who had stood before her just moments ago. She lifted her head, scanning the crowd for him. The mysterious man who had just bought her painting for an unbelievable price was none other than Elliot Grayson, a legendary Hollywood icon. Lillian's mouth fell open. Elliot Grayson, the man who had once been the face of Western films. A director, a producer, and an actor admired by generations, had come to her small art stall. Bought her painting, and invested in her future? She stammered, still watching his retreating figure as he walked leisurely down the sidewalk. But she wasn't the only one who had noticed. A middle-aged man standing nearby also turned his gaze toward Elliot. His expression filled with skepticism. "Wait, is that Elliot Grayson?" he said loudly, drawing the attention of those around him. Lillian felt her body tense. She didn't know what was about to happen next, but she knew that when a celebrity like Elliot Grayson appeared in public, it wouldn't take long for people to recognize him. And just as she feared, whispers quickly spread. "Oh my God, it really is Elliot Grayson. I've watched all of his movies. What's he doing here?" Murmurs turned into excitement. Some people started pulling out their phones, snapping photos and recording videos. A few bolder ones even stepped closer, calling out his name in hopes of getting a picture with him. Lillian saw Elliot pause slightly as he heard the voices of the growing crowd. But instead of hurrying away, he slowly turned around, offering a small smile. He didn't look surprised, perhaps after decades of fame. He had grown used to it. Yet, his attention remained on Lillian. He walked back toward her stall, undeterred by the flashing phone cameras around them. "You seem confused," Elliot said, his deep voice carrying a hint of amusement. Lillian blinked, trying to steady herself. I just don't understand why a Hollywood legend like you would buy my painting. I'm just a street artist." Elliot chuckled softly. "You are not just a street artist, Lillian. You have talent, and talent deserves recognition." She swallowed hard, still struggling to process everything. "But, $50? Do you really think my painting is worth that much?" Elliot gazed at her, his eyes sharp yet sincere. "Value doesn't lie only in a painting. It lies in the artist who creates it. You have a unique way of seeing the world. I can see it in every brushstroke. I don't want to see talent like yours go to waste just because you lack opportunity." Lillian felt her chest tighten. She was used to pity, to empty encouragement from people who didn't truly care. But Elliot wasn't pitying her, he was placing his faith in her. As they spoke, the crowd around them grew larger. Bystanders stopped to see what was happening. And when they spotted Elliot Grayson, they immediately understood. Questions started to rise. What's he doing here? Why would he buy that girl's painting? Is she some famous artist I don't know about? A few reporters from nearby publications had already arrived, cameras and microphones in hand, pushing through the crowd to capture photos of Elliot standing beside Lillian in her small art stall. Elliot seemed to realize the situation was getting out of control. He glanced at Lillian and spoke in a low voice. "It looks like you're about to become the center of media attention." Lillian let out a nervous laugh. "I never thought I'd be noticed like this." Elliot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "There's an unspoken rule in this world. When someone has real talent, sooner or later, someone will see it and acknowledge it." He hesitated for a moment as if he wanted to say something more. But then he simply smiled. "Just keep doing what you do best. Good things will come." And with those words, Elliot gave her a slight nod before turning to leave, disappearing into the flashing lights and excited voices. Watching him fade into the distance, Lillian knew her life had just turned a new page, one she had never dared to dream of. The news of Elliot Grayson purchasing a painting from a young street artist spread like wildfire. Major newspapers began covering Lillian's story, the girl battling cancer who fought against fate with her artistic talent. A prestigious art magazine published an article titled, "From Sidewalk to Spotlight, The Extraordinary Journey of Lillian Hayes," sparking a wave of public interest. Photos of Elliot Grayson standing in front of her stall, holding the black and white desert landscape painting, appeared across all media platforms. Everyone was talking about Lillian, her story, and the resilient life she had chosen instead of surrendering to her circumstances. And the result? Her humble little stall suddenly became one of the city's most talked about destinations. Lillian couldn't believe her eyes when she arrived the next morning. A long line of people had already formed, stretching from the sidewalk all the way to the street corner. These weren't just passers-by who had stopped out of curiosity. They were people who had read her story and had come specifically to buy her artwork. A middle-aged woman smiled as she saw Lillian approach. "You're finally here. I've been in line since early morning to get one of your paintings." Another man, well-dressed, seemingly a businessman, was just as eager. "My sister is an art lover. I want to buy one of your paintings as a gift for her. Your story is truly inspiring." Lillian didn't know how to react. She had never seen this many people at her stall before. In fact, there were days when she couldn't sell a single painting. But now, every piece she had brought with her had people asking to buy it. She swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and got to work, selling her paintings, chatting with customers, and signing autographs upon request. Amidst the bustling crowd, a group of television reporters arrived. A female reporter, holding a microphone, made her way toward Lillian, followed by a cameraman. "Hello, Lillian. I'm Emily Carter, a reporter from City News Channel. Can you share how you feel about suddenly becoming an artistic sensation after Elliot Grayson purchased your painting?" Lillian was momentarily startled, but she quickly regained her composure. She had never been comfortable in front of cameras. But something inside her told her that this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to miss. She smiled, her voice slightly shaky but sincere. "Honestly, I still can't believe it. Just a day ago, I was worried about whether I could sell enough paintings to cover my medical expenses. But today, seeing all these people here, supporting me, believing in my art, it truly feels like a miracle." The reporter nodded and continued. "Do you think this could be a turning point for your art career?" Lillian was silent for a moment. An art career? She had never dared to dream that far before. She had painted simply because it was the one passion she could cling to while battling her illness. But now, as she saw the expectant faces around her, she realized, maybe this really was the beginning of something new. She smiled. "I hope so. I just want to keep painting and sharing my stories with the world." Not only the city but the entire country began taking notice of her. Articles about her continued to spread, from small blogs to major news outlets. A national television channel even extended an invitation for her to appear on a renowned art program. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from strangers congratulating her. Even prestigious art galleries reached out, expressing interest in hosting a solo exhibition for her. Elliot Grayson's simple yet profoundly meaningful act not only gave Lillian the means to afford her treatment but also completely transformed her life. From an unknown artist selling paintings on the sidewalk, she quickly became a name recognized across the nation. The story of a young painter battling illness, combined with the unexpected support of a mysterious man, inspired millions. After completing her chemotherapy, Lillian pursued her artistic dreams with a stronger spirit than ever before. Her paintings were no longer overlooked on city streets but were now displayed in prestigious galleries, high-profile auctions, and even renowned museums. People no longer bought her work just for her story but for her undeniable talent, something Elliot had recognized from the very beginning. But to Lillian, success wasn't just about fame or fortune. She used part of her earnings to support struggling young artists, offering free art classes for children passionate about painting but lacking the means to pursue it. She also established a foundation to assist young cancer patients, giving them the motivation to keep fighting, just as she once had. One day, at her first solo exhibition, as she gazed at her paintings proudly displayed on the walls, Lillian smiled. She recalled that moment on the sidewalk, the quiet man who had stood before her stall, listening to her story, and with one simple act, had changed everything. When asked what had brought her to where she was today, Lillian simply smiled and said, "Someone believed in me, even when I hadn't yet learned to believe in myself." And somewhere, amidst the ebb and flow of life, Elliot Grayson smiled as well. He sought neither recognition nor gratitude, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that a small act of kindness could create miracles, and that a true talent had been seen, cherished, and allowed to shine. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future content. And most importantly, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. What was your favorite part? Is there anything you'd like to see in the next video? Let's chat. See you in the next one.